Good morning. And I'm currently uploading um, a world healing field video. As I woke up this morning, came out of the dream world, feeling a world of panic. And although I had it somewhat contained, the intensity of it was so great that I worked with it through breath, through my vagus nerve calming breath work. I connected with my deep self. I did the things that I do to help, and it helped. And I got to a place where I could take my equipment upstairs, and I decided to make the healing video in the kitchen because I felt like the sound would carry the least from the kitchen as from other locations, because it was 5:30 in the morning and people continue to sleep past 5:30. I'm going to do another healing video for today, which is kind of unusual to me, but this is going to be an instructional video where my guide Arlen's going to come in and take us through a process to help us more gently and easily release the intensity of these energies. And so I'm just going to turn this over to Arlen and let Arlen guide us through this. Welcome. And as we have, in some ways, introduced again the concept or construct of each of us as humans having a space at the core of our body or the core of our being where an aspect of ourself that we refer to as the deep self resides. And in that space, the deep self is aware of but not involved in the energetics outside of itself. So the deep self exists within the core of our being, and the deep self also is connected to the higher realms, and it's also connected to the earthly realms. And the energy of the higher realms flows in, and the energy of the earthly realms rises up and creates this fountain of energy around the body, with the consciousness of the deep self remaining inside the physical capacity, and the thinking, feeling, awareness of the soul and the personality um, referred to as the self. So there is this being who, and these are just differentiated in terms of experience. There's this being who you are, this physical capacity that you live in, referred to as the body. There's an aspect of you that travels from lifetime to lifetime, referred to as your soul. There are many aspects that travel with your soul, that incarnate with the soul, and the soul incarnates into a body that has memory of its ancestry. And when we connect to this body by entering it during its conception and creation phase, then we come in as a being into this body and we affect its development. So it ends up being a reflection of who we are as an energy being. So this body is a reflection of Steve, the being who in this lifetime is referred to as Steve, who's in this body in this lifetime, and working with the energetics of the ancestral past that came forward into this body. And so was somewhat of a blueprint. The being, the soul being, also has a blueprint that it brings into the body, which has somewhat of a blueprint. And so the blueprint of the soul being impacts the body's blueprint, and together they form this structure that we live in. And the structure continually reforms itself. It can reform itself moment to moment. It can reform itself in just one instant of change. And the body goes from one experience of self to a different experience of self. One experience of self to a different experience of self. One experience of self to a different experience of self. And so we're capable of doing this continuously throughout the day, reforming ourself based on the vibrations that are happening around us. Stephen has talked about this process that I, as Arlen, as a being who is a guide to Stephen, assisted Stephen through a process from 96 to 97 to prepare him for the assisting in the incarnation of the being Abrahamanad into the earth as the soul of the earth. So he's spoken about that any number of times. Myself, as a being that just refers to himself as Arlen, is part of a group of beings that are here helping Stephen with the work he's doing here, and we're guiding him in that work. He recognized that I drew back from his conscious awareness to allow him to bring himself more fully into the body and allow a lot of the fears of the body to be released and be more filled with the deep self. So the deep self, exists within the center of the structure, but the deep self's influence, when it's allowed, increases. And so the body field can become the field of the deep self. The body field can become the resonant structure of that piece that is the vibration of the deep self. And the deep self can affect the opening of the heart, which it has. So this group of beings that I am representing in this physical body at the moment, this group of beings are assisting Stephen to come out of a limited perception of himself. So that's what we've been working with. And part of what we do is give him experiences outside of his beliefs, or point out his beliefs, and then give him experiences. When he lets go of that belief, we give him the experiences of what it is like outside of that limitation that many hold of themselves. Simple ones: not good enough, never do anything right, a failure, a person who's afraid of failing, meanness, timid, all these limiting things that keep the body, mind, emotional realm trapped. These we are working with Stephen in letting them go. And these include beliefs about God, the thought form of God, which does not exist outside of this realm. In the larger realm, there's just consciousness. There's not one consciousness creating, there's not one individual consciousness creating the reality for all consciousness. All consciousness is creating the reality of all consciousness. And there's various things going on. There's various things to be experienced in this realm. Some of the experiences of this realm are the experience of being separated from the one consciousness. And that is done by withdrawing oneself into oneself and perceiving oneself as alone in consciousness and separated from the community of consciousness that the one is. And so one can be in that and just trying to figure out how to make life a little bit better for oneself or a few around oneself, and what can we do, and that limitation holds one in that consciousness. Whereas if one comes out of that consciousness and just keeps coming out of that consciousness of those limited beliefs and ideas, one feels oneself come into a much larger, spacious world. And we've given Stephen some exercises to take his consciousness and move it arm's length from the body, which is about 3 feet in both directions, and experience that space, and then double it to 6 feet, experiencing that space, and then to 12 feet, experiencing that space, and then to 24 feet, experiencing that space. And and then to 48 feet, experiencing that space, and beyond 48 feet is 5D, or what's referred to as the fifth dimension, which is in consciousness outside of this, which a person in a body might be in a third dimensional consciousness, might be in a fourth dimensional consciousness, but it's still contained and not connected in consciousness to the higher dimensional spaces. That's what we're working with, each one of you with, is opening yourself up to higher dimensional spaces where you no longer feel separate from those spaces. And this is taking place, and this has been the process of this cleansing over the 28-year period of time that completes on March 24th of 2025. This is the process that we've been working with. As these energies rise, they tend to pull us into these higher dimensional awareness, comfortably or uncomfortably. It depends on how tightly you're wedded to the experience you're having. And the more tightly you're wedded to that experience, the more uncomfortable it'll be when these energies are helping to break up that consciousness. And we're trying to hold on to it. And then we feel this pain in our body from trying to hold on to our body in this place. It can create pain, the resistance of stopping the expansion. But if we stop resisting the expansion and accept the expansion as our natural progression in consciousness, a lot of that pain goes away just like that. So if that pain that you felt from the contraction, do it again, go into that contraction and that pain that you feel from the contraction, and then you allow expansion. You feel the difference if you do that. So if you go from contraction to expansion, contraction to expansion, contraction to expansion, you begin to have that experience of how you create that reality for yourself. We're going to work with one specific area with Stephen, and you may find this area related to an area you're feeling as well. And this area is in the back of the head. You'll feel like if you rub your hand over, you'll feel a little ridge, and that ridge is along the occiput. And that ridge has to do with some tightness of holding on to fear. And so this part of this is the ancestral fear of the various events that our ancestors did not let go of. And so we can, at times of expansion, feel this contraction that's an ancestral contraction of unreleased energies from the past that are carried forward. And so they're present energies, they're present contractions. We're feeling them in the present. And even though they may be experiences of the past of an ancestor that we on some levels weren't there, but on the level of experience are there right now, And you can begin to soften that experience for yourself and for your ancestors. And then you can just release that. Release that fear, tightness. The event is over when it's over for you. And then you take that into the body as an expansive energy that opens up the body and expands the body and releases those places of fear throughout the body. And along with that, there was some grief that released and there was some anger that released. But the main component of that lockdown was fear. And when that fear released, so did the grief, so did the anger, so did whatever other energetics were a part of that event. They all came out. That is an example of healing. That is an example of deep self-healing. Healing from the deep self, from the core of being, that peace, acceptance, and understanding spreading out and filling up the field that we refer to as the body. And you may feel these changes taking place throughout the day today, and you can watch this video again and again and again if you want to. And each time you may find that you release these energetics on a deeper and deeper level, or it may be some you found that you just release these energies on that deep level right away and don't necessarily feel like you need to watch it again. But it's all available to you, and it's our pleasure to serve you and to serve Stephen, serving the oneness as we do our work. So, pleasure to be with you again, and we will see when it's right for us to come back and do a bit more work in this way. Okay, and as Stephen is reminding me to make sure I say Namaste. And so I've said that, Namaste, and Namaste, and now must live throughout the day, and change involves letting go. And may this all serve you well, and all be for the highest good. And Stephen wants me to say a women, so a women.